The distress signal came through at 0300 hours and it changed everything. Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alert sounded across Outpost Meridian. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair starting to show at his temples. 10 years of commanding humanity's furthest military station had aged him faster than he liked to admit. He set down his cup and moved to the communications console where Lieutenant Danny Brooks was already pulling up the message. "Sir, you need to hear this," Danny said. His voice was tight with concern. Jake put on the headset and listened. What he heard made his blood run cold. The voice was soft and musical, almost like wind chimes speaking words. It belonged to a Velnar, one of the peaceful species that made up the Galactic Council. Jake had met a few Velnar during diplomatic meetings. They were gentle creatures with skin that looked like colored crystal, always polite, always kind. They reminded him of the best parts of humanity, the parts that believed in helping others. But this Velnar was crying. "Please," the voice said through the translator. "Anyone who can hear this. We need help. They came 3 days ago. The Krell, they are killing us. They are taking our children. We have no weapons. We have no way to fight. Please, we beg you. Send help. Send angels. Send anyone. We are dying," the message repeated, over and over. The same plea, the same desperate hope that somewhere in the vast universe, someone would care enough to answer. Jake looked at Danny. The younger officer's face was pale. "How many people on that colony?" Jake asked. 200,000, sir. Mostly civilians. Farmers, teachers, families. Danny pulled up more data on his screen. The Krell hit them hard. 3 warships in orbit. Ground forces already in the main cities. The Galactic Council received the same message 6 hours ago. And what did the Council say? Danny's jaw tightened. They are forming a committee to discuss possible responses. They expect to have a preliminary report in 2 weeks. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, those people would be dead or in chains. The Krell Empire did not take prisoners for ransom. They took slaves. They broke entire civilizations and used the survivors as labor. The galaxy knew this. The Council knew this. And they were forming a committee. "Get me Admiral Phillips at Earth Command," Jake said. "Priority channel." It took 20 minutes to establish the connection across the light years. When Admiral Phillips appeared on the screen, she looked like she had not slept. She was a short woman with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded fleets in the resource. Wars back when humanity was still fighting itself over water and minerals on Earth. She understood what was at stake. "I heard the message," she said before Jake could speak. Every human station in the sector picked it up. "I have been on calls with the civilian government for the past hour. They want to help, but they are worried about starting a war with the Krell. Admiral, with respect, the war already started. The Krell started it when they attacked a peaceful colony." Phillips nodded slowly. "I agree, but we are new to this galactic community, Jake. We have been part of the Council for less than 5 years. If we act without their approval, we might get kicked out, and then we lose access to their trade routes, their technology, their star charts. The politicians are worried." "What about the military?" A thin smile crossed the Admiral's face. "The military is ready. We have been ready since the day we learned the Krell existed. I just need the authorization." She leaned forward. "How fast can you get a ship to Ceres 4? Jake felt something settle in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or purpose. "The ECS Reaper is docked here for resupply. Captain Lisa Grant is on board with a full crew and a marine company. They can launch in 4 hours. Then they launch in 3, Phillips said. "I will handle the politicians. You handle the rescue. And Jake, tell Captain Grant she has full authorization to use whatever force is necessary. The Krell need to learn that there are consequences for attacking the innocent." The connection ended. Jake allowed himself 1 moment to close his eyes and breathe. Then he was moving. He found Captain Lisa Grant in the station's gym running on a treadmill. She was a lean woman in her early 30s with blonde hair pulled back in a tight braid. Sweat soaked her gray tank top, but she was not even breathing hard. She had been a marathon runner before joining the military, and she still trained like she might need to run across a continent. "Captain," Jake said, "we have a mission." Lisa hit the stop button and grabbed a towel. "The Velnar distress call. You heard it?" "Everyone heard it, sir. That kind of thing travels fast on a station this size." She wiped her face. "What are we doing about it?" "You are taking the Reaper to Ceres 4. You will eliminate the Krell presence and secure the colony. Rules of engagement are simple. Any Krell forces that do not immediately surrender are to be destroyed. Lisa's expression did not change, but Jake saw something flash in her eyes. Not excitement, not bloodlust, just cold determination. How long do I have to prep? 3 hours. Then I better skip the shower. She headed for the door, then paused. Sir, the council is not going to like this. I know. We might be starting something we cannot finish. I know that too. Jake met her eyes. But I have been listening to that message for the past hour. Those people are begging for help, and we can help them. So we will. Lisa nodded once. Yes, sir. We will bring them home. The next 3 hours were organized chaos. The Reaper was a warship, one of humanity's newest and most advanced. It looked nothing like the elegant vessels other species flew. There was no smooth curves or artistic design. The Reaper was all angles and armor plating, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. It looked exactly like what it was, a machine built to kill other machines. Lieutenant Chris Harper supervised the loading of ammunition and supplies. He was a thin man with glasses who looked more like a college professor than a military officer. That was because he had been a professor before the war, teaching mathematics at a university on Mars. But Chris had a gift for tactical thinking, for seeing patterns in chaos. He could look at a battlefield and know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Sergeant Amy Coleman gathered her Marines in the hangar bay. She was a short woman with muscles that came from years of wearing powered armor and carrying heavy weapons. Her face was scarred from a training accident that had nearly killed her. She wore the scars proudly. The Marines called her Sledgehammer because once she hit something, it stayed down. Listen up, Amy called out to her troops. We are going to a place called Saris 4. There are civilians under attack by Krell forces. Our job is simple. We get those people out. Anyone who tries to stop us gets put down. I do not care if they are twice our size or if they outnumber us 10 to 1. We are Marines. We do not lose. The Marines shouted their approval. They checked their weapons and armor, preparing for war. They joked and laughed because that was how soldiers dealt with fear. But Jake, watching from the observation deck, could see the steel in their eyes. These were people who had volunteered to be humanity's first line of defense. They knew what they were signing up for. Captain Lisa Grant took her position on the bridge. She ran through the pre-flight checks with her crew, making sure every system was ready. The Reaper was more than just a ship to her. It was her responsibility, her home and her weapon all at once. All stations report ready, Captain, her executive officer said. Then let us go save some lives, Lisa said. She opened a channel to the station. Outpost Meridian, this is the ECS Reaper. Requesting permission to depart. Jake's voice came through clear. Permission granted, Reaper. Give them hell. The warship detached from the station and turned toward the stars. Its engines flared bright blue as it accelerated, faster and faster, until it reached the speed needed to jump into faster-than-light travel. Space twisted around the ship, and in a flash of light it was gone. On Saris 4, the Velnar continued to transmit their message. They prayed to whatever gods might listen. They hoped that somewhere among the stars someone had heard their cry for help. They did not know that help was already coming. And they did not know that the help they received would not look anything like angels. Commander Vectar stood on the balcony of what had once been the Velnar governor's residence and looked out at his conquered territory. The city below was quiet now. The initial resistance had been pathetic, over in less than an hour. The Velnar had no weapons, no armies, no concept of organized violence. They had simply stood there while his soldiers rounded them up like livestock. It almost made him feel disappointed. Vectar was a warrior. He had scars across his dark-scaled skin from dozens of battles. He had led the conquest of 4 different worlds. But there was no glory in defeating an enemy that would not even fight back. Still, orders were orders. The Krell Empire wanted this world for its resources, and Vectar would deliver it. Commander, one of his officers approached. The holding pens are full. What should we do with the overflow? Put them in the school buildings. Lock them in. We will process them tomorrow. Vectar waved his hand dismissively. And make sure the young ones are separated from the adults. The Emperor wants them trained from childhood. Easier to break them that way. The officer saluted and left. Vectar turned back to look at the sunset. The sky here was purple instead of the red he was used to on his homeworld. Everything about this planet was soft and gentle. Even the air smelled like flowers. It disgusted him. His communicator beeped. "Commander, we are detecting a ship entering the system." Vectar felt a flicker of interest. "Galactic Council." "Unknown, sir. It is not broadcasting any identification. Small vessel, cruiser class. Should we hail them?" "Destroy them," Vectar said. "We do not have time for council diplomats and their useless words." But the ship did not give them time to fire. Captain Lisa Grant watched the tactical display as the Reaper emerged from faster-than-light travel. 3 Krell warships hung in orbit around Ceres 4, exactly where the intelligence said they would be. They were bigger than the Reaper, heavily armored with enough firepower to level a city. The Krell had conquered 17 civilizations with ships like these. "Target locks acquired," Lieutenant Chris Harper said from the tactical station. His fingers moved across his console with practiced ease. "All 3 ships are powering weapons. They will fire in approximately 40 seconds. "Do not give them 40 seconds, Lisa said calmly. "Fire everything." The Reaper's railgun spoke first. Magnetic accelerators launched solid metal slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. No lasers, no plasma, just metal and physics. 3 slugs, each one aimed at a different Krell ship. The rounds crossed the distance in seconds. The first slug hit a Krell cruiser before its shields could fully activate. The metal penetrated the hull like a knife through paper, passing completely through the ship. Air and debris exploded from both sides. The cruiser began to spin, its engines dead, its crew dying. The second slug hit shields that were already up. The shield held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The slug continued through, shearing off one of the main weapon arrays. The Krell ship lurched to the side, crippled but not destroyed. The third Krell captain had been faster. His shields were at full power when the slug hit. The round deflected, missing the ship entirely. That captain was already barking orders, bringing his vessel around to return fire. "He is good," Chris observed, "but not good enough." Missiles away. 12 missiles launched from the Reaper's tubes. These were not like the weapons other species used. Human missiles did not just explode. They thought. Each missile had its own simple computer brain, constantly adjusting its course, looking for weaknesses in enemy defenses. The Krell ship fired its point defense weapons, trying to shoot down the incoming missiles. It destroyed 4. It would have destroyed more, but the Reaper launched a swarm of drones at the same time. The small automated craft streaked toward the Krell ship, jamming sensors and drawing fire. The point defense systems had to choose between the drones and the missiles. They chose wrong. 8 missiles hit the Krell ship in a span of 5 seconds. Nuclear warheads detonated against the shields, overloading them completely. The final 2 missiles punched through the unprotected hull and exploded inside the ship. The cruiser broke apart in a ball of fire and radiation. The damaged second ship tried to run. It burned its engines at full power, trying to escape into faster-than-light travel. But the Reaper was faster. Lisa pushed her ship to maximum acceleration, closing the distance. Chris fired the railguns again. 3 more slugs. The fleeing Krell ship had no shields left to stop them. The slugs tore through the engines and the ship went dark and dead, drifting in space. "Total time, 3 minutes 40 seconds, Chris said. 3 enemy ships eliminated or disabled. We took no damage." Lisa did not smile. There was no satisfaction in killing, only necessity. "Good. Now get me everything you can on the ground situation. I want to know where the civilians are and where the Krell forces are positioned." While Chris worked, Lisa opened a channel to the lower decks. "Sergeant Coleman, you are clear for drop in 10 minutes. Try to keep the collateral damage low. These people have suffered enough." Amy Coleman's voice came back rough and ready. "Roger that, Captain. We will be gentle." Down in the hangar bay, Amy checked her armor one last time. The powered suit was matte black, covered in sensor arrays and weapon mounts. It made her look twice her normal size and 10 times as dangerous. Around her, 40 Marines were doing the same checks, preparing for combat. "Listen up," Amy called out. "The civilians are being held in 3 main locations: schools, warehouses, and some kind of community center. Krell forces are scattered throughout the city, probably around 200 soldiers. They are expecting soft targets because that is all they have ever fought. Show them what a real fight looks like." The Marines loaded into drop pods, cramped metal capsules that would carry them from orbit to the surface. Amy sealed her helmet and felt the pod close around her. Through her suit's radio, she could hear the breathing of her team, steady and calm despite what was coming. "Drop in 30 seconds, the ship's computer announced. Amy counted down silently. When the pods launched, The acceleration slammed her back into the cushioned seat. The pod shook and rattled as it hit the atmosphere, heating up until the exterior glowed red-hot. Through the small window, Amy could see the ground rushing up to meet her. The pod hit the ground hard, its shock absorbers barely softening the impact. The door blew off with explosive bolts and Amy was moving before the smoke cleared. Her helmet display lit up with tactical information, showing her the positions of her squad and the locations of enemy forces. She was in a plaza near the city center. Krell soldiers were running toward her position, weapons raised. They were big creatures, nearly 7 feet tall with thick scales and natural armor. They looked confident, like they had never lost a fight in their lives. Amy raised her rifle and fired. The plasma rounds hit the first Krell soldier in the chest. His armor, designed to stop conventional weapons, melted like wax. He went down screaming. The others scattered, looking for cover. But there was nowhere to hide from humans who had been fighting wars since they learned to stand upright. Amy's squad spread out with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this, rehearsed it 100 times in simulations. Private Kevin Hayes took position on a rooftop with a sniper rifle. Corporal Nina Bell moved to flank the Krell position. Lieutenant Paul Stevens coordinated the assault, his voice calm in everyone's helmet. "Contact right," Kevin called out. 3 Krell moving to surround us. "I see them," Nina responded. Taking the shot, her rifle coughed once. Through her scope, she watched a Krell soldier fall. The other 2 turned toward her position, trying to locate the threat. They never got the chance. Amy and Paul hit them from the side, their plasma fire cutting through armor and flesh. The Krell in the plaza began to realize they were not fighting farmers. They fell back, regrouping, calling for reinforcements. But reinforcements were not coming. All over the city, Marine squads were hitting Krell positions simultaneously. The enemy was overwhelmed, fighting in a dozen places at once, against an opponent they did not understand. Commander Vektar heard the reports coming in from his troops and felt something he had not experienced in years: fear. His soldiers were dying. Entire squads were going silent. And he still did not know what was attacking them. The descriptions made no sense. Small creatures in black armor that moved like shadows and hit like thunder. "Pull everyone back to the main compound," he ordered. "Defensive positions. Kill anything that comes through the walls." But Amy Coleman had other plans. She stood outside the school building where the Velnar were being held. Krell guards were visible through the windows, weapons trained on the civilians inside. A direct assault would get people killed. "Chris," Amy said into her communicator, "I need a precision strike on my position."
"Can you hit a building without bringing it down?"
From orbit, Chris studied the target. "I can do that. Give me a target point." Amy used her suit's laser to paint a spot on the roof away from where the civilians were being held. There, hit it hard but contained. Seconds later, a railgun slug came down from space. It hit the roof exactly where Amy had marked it. The impact shattered the upper floor, sending the Krell guards sprawling. Before they could recover, Amy and her squad breached the doors. The fight was short and brutal. The Krell were good soldiers. The Galactic Council chamber was located on a space station that orbited a neutral star, far from any single species' territory. It was a massive structure built over centuries, with meeting halls large enough to hold representatives from 50 different worlds. The architecture was elegant, all flowing curves and natural light, designed to promote peace and cooperation. Today, that peace was shattered. Ambassador Helen Price sat in the human delegation seat and watched as species after species stood to condemn Earth's actions. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp features that had been hardened by years of diplomatic service. She had negotiated trade deals, settled disputes, and smiled through countless formal dinners. But today she was not smiling. The Thaxian representative, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, spoke in tones that the translator rendered as angry. "The humans violated every principle we hold dear. They entered a conflict zone without authorization. They used weapons of mass destruction. They killed hundreds of Krell soldiers. This is not how civilized species behave." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Helen waited. She had learned long ago that the best time to speak was after everyone else had exhausted themselves. The Quilleen delegate stood next, her 4 arms gesturing dramatically. "We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. 3,000 years without major conflicts. And now humanity, who has been part of our community for barely 5 years, starts a war with one of the most powerful empires in known space. Do they understand what they have done? More voices joined in. The accusations piled up. Humanity was reckless. Humanity was violent. Humanity was dangerous. Some delegates suggested expelling Earth from the Council immediately. Others proposed sanctions and trade restrictions. A few of the more extreme voices even suggested military action against human space. Finally, the Council speaker, an ancient being from a species so old no one remembered their world of origin, raised one crystalline hand for silence. The human delegation will now respond to these charges. Helen stood slowly. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had once called themselves friends. She had shared meals with some of these beings, had laughed at their jokes, had worked beside them on humanitarian projects. I have listened to your concerns, Helen began, her voice steady. And I understand your fear. You are afraid because we did something you could not do. We acted while you debated. We saved lives while you formed committees. And now you are angry because we showed you the uncomfortable truth that your peace was built on the suffering of those too weak to fight back. The chamber erupted in protests. The speaker had to call for order 3 times before the noise died down. Helen continued, unfazed. The Velnar sent a distress signal. You all heard it. A peaceful species, your members of this very council, were being slaughtered and enslaved. And what did you do? You talked. You discussed. You planned to meet again in 2 weeks to form a response strategy. In 2 weeks, every Velnar on that planet would have been dead or in chains. We would have found a diplomatic solution. The Thaxian delegate insisted. Violence is never the answer. Tell that to the Krell, Helen shot back. Tell that to the 17 species they have conquered. Tell that to the billions of beings living as slaves in their empire right now. How many diplomatic missions have you sent to free them? How many strongly worded letters have you written? The chamber fell silent. The truth was uncomfortable. The council had known about the Krell's atrocities for decades. They had passed resolutions condemning the empire's actions. They had imposed sanctions that the Krell simply ignored, but they had never actually stopped them. We are not warriors, the Qualine delegate said quietly. Our species evolved past the need for violence millions of years ago. We cannot simply throw away everything we are. Helen's expression softened slightly. I understand. Most species in this chamber come from peaceful worlds. Your evolution was gentle. You developed intelligence and society without the constant threat of predators and war. You are lucky. You are blessed. But humanity is not like you. She pulled up a display showing Earth, the blue and green world hanging in space. This is our home. It does not look dangerous, does it? But Earth is what we call a death world. The gravity is higher than most inhabited planets. The weather can kill you. The oceans are filled with creatures that see humans as food. Even the plants can be poisonous. The display changed, showing images from Earth's history. Predators hunting prey. Natural disasters destroying cities. Wars between human nations. We evolved in constant danger. We learned to hunt because we had to. We learned to fight because everything else on our planet was trying to kill us. And then, when we ran out of external threats, we turned on each other. For thousands of years, humanity has been perfecting the art of warfare. This is not something to be proud of, the Thaxian delegate said. You are right, Helen agreed. It is not. Every human child learns about our bloody history. We teach them about the wars, the genocides, the weapons we built that could destroy our entire planet. We do not hide from what we are, but we also do not apologize for it anymore, because we learned something valuable from all that violence. She paused, looking around the chamber. We learned how to stop it, how to control it, how to aim it at the things that deserve it. The Krell are butchers. They prey on the weak, and you have let them do it because you do not have the stomach to stop them. Well, we do. The council speaker leaned forward. And what happens when humanity decides that another species deserves your violence? What happens when you turn those weapons on us? It was the question Helen had been waiting for. That is a fair concern, and I cannot give you a guarantee that will satisfy everyone. But I can tell you this. Every human soldier who went to Ceres 4 is trained not just in combat, but in ethics, in the laws of war, in the difference between a soldier and a murderer. We do not enjoy violence. We do not seek it out. But when innocent people cry for help, we answer. She pulled up footage from Ceres 4. The chamber watched in silence as Marines freed Velnar civilians from holding pens, as human medics treated wounded Velnar children, as Sergeant Amy Coleman knelt down to comfort a frightened family, her armor covered in dirt and blood. "Look at them," Helen said. "Look at these so-called demons. Yes, they killed Krell soldiers. Yes, they used overwhelming force. But they did it to save lives. And when the fighting was over, those same soldiers who had just been killing became protectors and medics and friends." The Velnar delegate stood for the first time since the session began. She was a small being, her crystalline body reflecting the chamber's light in rainbow colors. Her name was Lyra, and she had lost family members in the attack. "May I speak?" Lyra asked quietly. The speaker nodded. "The chair recognizes the Velnar delegation." Lyra's voice was soft, but it carried through the silent chamber. "I was on Sirius 4 when the Krell came. I watched them kill my brother. I watched them take my brother's children away to be trained as slaves. I sent that distress signal. I begged for help. And I waited. I waited for this council to save us. But you did not come." She turned to look directly at Helen. "The humans came. They were terrifying. Their weapons were terrible. Their soldiers looked like creatures from nightmares. But they saved us. They saved my nieces. They saved 200,000 Velnar who would be dead or enslaved right now if we had waited for a diplomatic solution." Lyra turned back to the council. "So yes, humans are violent. Yes, they are dangerous, but they are also the only ones who cared enough to actually help. I do not care if they are angels or demons. I care that my family is alive because of them." The chamber was completely silent. Several delegates looked uncomfortable. Others looked ashamed. Helen spoke again, her voice gentler now. "We do not want to be your enemies. We do not want to take over or conquer or control. We want to be your protectors. Someone has to stand between the innocent and the monsters. Let us be that someone. Let us use our violence for something good." The debate continued for hours after that. Some species remained opposed to humanity's actions. Others began to see the logic in what Helen said. A few delegates privately approached Helen to express support they could not voice publicly. In the end, the vote was close. Humanity would remain part of the Galactic Council. But a new designation was created. Earth was named a protectorate species, authorized to respond with military force when council members were under attack. There would be oversight, rules, and restrictions. But humanity would be allowed to do what they did best: protect those who could not protect themselves. Far from the council chambers, in a heavily guarded prison facility, Commander Vector sat in a cell and thought about the battle he had lost. Krell did not usually take prisoners. When they conquered a world, they killed or enslaved everyone. The concept of a military tribunal was foreign to him. But humans insisted. They wanted him tried for war crimes. They wanted justice, not revenge. A guard brought him a meal. Real food, not nutrient paste. The guard was human, a young man who looked barely old enough to be a soldier. Vector stared at him, trying to understand. "Why do you feed me?" Vector asked. "Why do you not just kill me?" Emperor Krell sat on his throne and listened to reports that made his blood boil. The throne room was vast, built from the bones of conquered species, a reminder of Krell's superiority. But today those reminders felt hollow. 3 ships destroyed, 200 soldiers dead or captured, an entire colony lost in less than 6 hours. The Emperor's advisor, General Takaron, delivered the news with his head bowed. "The humans did this, my Emperor. A single ship." Krellnoth was enormous even by Krell standards, nearly 8 feet tall with scales as black as space itself. He had ruled the Empire for 30 years, and in that time no species had ever defeated his forces so completely. "Tell me about these humans." Takaron pulled up a holographic display. "They come from a world called Earth, high gravity. Dangerous wildlife, extreme weather. Their entire evolutionary history was shaped by constant threats. They are predators, my Emperor. Apex predators. We are predators too. Not like them." Takaron changed the display, showing human history. Wars between nations. Weapons that could destroy entire cities. Millions dead in conflicts that lasted years. They have been fighting each other for their entire existence. Every advancement in their technology has been driven by warfare. They know nothing but violence. The Emperor studied the images. He saw something in those humans that disturbed him. They did not fight with honor or ritual like the Krell. They fought to win using any advantage they could find. And the Galactic Council allowed them to attack us? The Council gave them authorization to act as protectors. They can now respond with military force when other species are threatened. Krell stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the room. Then we will teach them what happens when someone challenges the Krell Empire. Assemble the largest fleet we have ever created. 300 warships. We will strike at the heart of human space and burn their worlds to ash. My Emperor, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans are dangerous, and so are we. Krellnoth's eyes glowed with fury. Send the fleet to New Vancouver. It is their newest colony, barely defended. 2 million humans live there. We will show them what it means to anger the Krell. The general bowed and left to carry out his orders. Krellnoth returned to his throne, already imagining the victory. The humans would learn. Everyone learned eventually. On Outpost Meridian, Jake Morrison received the intelligence report and felt his stomach drop. 300 ships. It was the largest Krell fleet ever assembled, and they were heading straight for New Vancouver. How long do we have? Jake asked. Lieutenant Danny Brooks checked his calculations. 4 days. Maybe 5 if they stop to refuel. New Vancouver has a garrison of 50 Marines and 2 patrol ships. They cannot handle this. Jake pulled up a map of human space. We need to evacuate the colony. 2 million people in 4 days? Danny shook his head. We do not have enough transport ships. Even if we started right now, we would get maybe half of them out. Jake stared at the map, his mind racing through options. Every scenario ended the same way. Too many people. Not enough time. Unless they did something crazy. Get me Captain Grant and Admiral Phillips. I have an idea, and they are going to hate it. An hour later, Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Reaper and listened to Jake's plan. Around her, 7 other human warships floated in formation. The Valkyrie, the Havoc, the Cerberus, the Warhound, the Fury, the Devastator, the Reckoning. 8 ships total. Every combat vessel Earth could spare on short notice. You want us to fight 300 Krell warships with 8 ships? Lisa said slowly, making sure she understood correctly. I want you to delay them, Jake corrected. Give us time to evacuate as many civilians as possible. Even a few extra hours could save thousands of lives. We will be slaughtered. Maybe. But you are the best tactical minds humanity has. If anyone can pull this off, it is you. Lisa looked at her crew, Chris Harper at the tactical station, already running calculations. Her executive officer, Commander Kate Rogers, standing ready. These people trusted her to lead them into battle. Now she was leading them into what might be a suicide mission. All right, Lisa said finally. We will buy you time, but I expect a medal if we survive this. You can have a whole chest full of them, Jake promised. The 8 human warships took up position near New Vancouver, spreading out in a defensive formation. Behind them, civilian transports began the desperate work of evacuating the colony. Families were torn from their homes with only what they could carry. Children cried. Adults argued. But everyone moved because they understood what was coming. Lieutenant Chris Harper worked with the other tactical officers, developing a battle plan. They had studied the Krell tactics from every battle they could find records of. The Krell liked to overwhelm their enemies with numbers, using their superior firepower to simply pound opponents into submission. We cannot fight them head-on, Chris said during the strategic meeting. We will lose in the first 5 minutes. We need to make them fight on our terms. And how do we do that? Asked Commander Kate Rogers from the Valkyrie. Chris pulled up a tactical display. We make them angry. We hit and run. We use the asteroid field near the colony. We turn this into a guerrilla war where their numbers work against them. Over the next 3 days, they prepared. Mines were placed throughout the asteroid field. Drones were programmed with attack patterns. Every piece of equipment that could be weaponized was turned into a trap. On the 4th day, the Krell fleet arrived. It was the largest gathering of warships anyone had ever seen. 300 vessels, each one bristling with weapons. They moved in perfect formation, a display of military might that had terrified dozens of species. Emperor Krellnoth watched from his flagship as the human colony appeared on the scopes. Destroy everything. Leave nothing standing. But then the sensors picked up the 8 human ships positioned between the fleet and the planet. 8 ships? The Emperor almost laughed. They send 8 ships against 300. These humans are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both, my Emperor, General Takaron suggested. It does not matter. All ships, open fire. The Krell fleet unleashed a barrage that should have vaporized the human ships instantly. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles crossed the space between the fleets, but the human ships were not there anymore. Lisa Grant had timed it perfectly. The moment the Krell fired, all 8 human vessels engaged their engines at full power, diving into the nearby asteroid field. The Krell weapons struck empty space or exploded against asteroids. Now, Lisa ordered. Hidden drones activated throughout the field. They were small, each one barely larger than a person, but they carried powerful explosives. Dozens of them launched themselves at the Krell fleet like suicide attackers. The Krell point defenses tried to shoot them down, but there were too many coming from too many directions. Explosions blossomed across the fleet as drones found their targets. Shields flickered and failed, hull plating cracked. Then the mines activated. Krell ships pushing into the asteroid field triggered proximity sensors. More explosions. More damage. The perfect formation broke apart as ships tried to avoid the deadly field. "They are running into the asteroid," Chris reported. "Just like we wanted." The asteroid field became a maze of death. Krell ships were too large to maneuver easily between the rocks. They collided with asteroids, with debris, with each other, and all the while the 8 human warships darted through the chaos like sharks, appearing just long enough to fire before disappearing again. Sergeant Amy Coleman watched from New Vancouver's surface as transports continued to lift off. Behind her, the sky lit up with distant explosions. "How long can they hold?" "As long as they need to," answered Captain Frank Russell, the garrison commander. "Those are some of the best officers in the fleet up there. They will get it done." In space, Emperor Krell realized he had made a mistake. The humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to delay. Every minute his fleet spent in this cursed asteroid field was another minute for civilians to escape. "Forward ships, push through," he ordered. "Ignore the human vessels. Get to the planet." 50 Krell warships broke from the main fleet, burning their engines to maximum as they tried to reach New Vancouver. But Lisa Grant had expected this. "All ships intercept course," she commanded. "Target their engines only. We do not need to destroy them. Just slow them down." The Reaper emerged from behind an asteroid, railguns firing. The slugs were not aimed at the Krell ships' hulls. They targeted the engine sections. One ship's propulsion failed. Then another, and another. The ships did not explode. They just stopped, becoming obstacles that the other Krell vessels had to navigate around. Chris Harper coordinated with the other tactical officers, turning the battle into a complex puzzle. Every move the Krell made was countered. Every attempt to push forward was blocked. The human ships took damage. The Havoc lost its port weapons array. The Warhound's shields failed. But they kept fighting. Hour after hour, the battle continued. The Krell fleet slowly pushed through the asteroid field, but at a terrible cost. Ships collided. Mines claimed victims. The human vessels inflicted damage far beyond what 8 ships should be capable of. On the surface, the last transport lifted off. 2 million people evacuated. Not everyone had made it. Some refused to leave their homes. 3 months had passed since the Battle of New Vancouver, and the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. In a courtroom on the neutral space station where the Galactic Council met, Commander Vector stood trial for war crimes. The chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all wanting to witness this historic moment. For the first time in galactic history, a Krell officer was being held accountable for his actions. Ambassador Helen Price sat in the observation section, watching as evidence was presented. Recordings of Krell soldiers separating Velnar children from their parents, documents outlining the Empire's slave trade operations. Testimony from survivors who described horrors that made even hardened diplomats weep. Vector stood silent through it all. He offered no defense, no justification. He simply accepted what was happening with a stoic dignity that surprised many observers. When the judges asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he spoke for the first time. "I have served the Krell Empire my entire life," Vector said, his voice rough. "I believed we were strong. I believed might made right. I believed the weak existed only to serve the strong." He paused, looking around the courtroom. "The humans taught me I was wrong. Not through words, through action. They defeated us in battle, but they did not enslave us. They captured us, but they did not torture us. They had every right to execute me, but instead they gave me a trial." He turned to look directly at Helen. "I do not ask for mercy. I do not deserve it. But I want my people to know that there is another way. That strength without honor is just cruelty. That power without responsibility is just tyranny. The judges deliberated for 2 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Life imprisonment. Vector accepted the sentence without protest. As guards led him away, he stopped briefly beside Helen. "Tell your soldiers I said thank you," he said quietly, "for showing me what true strength looks like." Helen nodded, and Vector was taken away. She knew his trial was just the beginning. The Krell Empire was crumbling. Without their aura of invincibility, conquered species were rising up, demanding freedom. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had been the catalyst. On Earth, in a small town in what used to be called Montana, Sergeant Amy Coleman walked through a park with her niece. The child was 7 years old, full of energy and questions. She tugged on Amy's hand, pointing at birds in the trees. "Aunt Amy, tell me about space," the girl said. "Tell me about the aliens," Amy smiled. She had been back on Earth for 2 weeks, taking leave after months of deployment. The military had offered her a promotion, a desk job at headquarters. She had turned it down. Her place was with her Marines, with the people who depended on her. "Space is big," Amy said, kneeling down to her niece's level. "Bigger than you can imagine. And it is full of people. Some of them look like us. Some look totally different. But most of them are good. They have families like us. They worry about their kids. They work hard. They want to be happy. Are there bad aliens too?" Amy thought about the Krell, about the battles she had fought, about the people she had killed. Yes, there are bad aliens, just like there are bad humans. But that is why we have soldiers, to protect the good people from the bad ones. Are you a good soldier, Aunt Amy? "I try to be," Amy said honestly. She pulled her niece into a hug. "I try very hard to be." Far away on Outpost Meridian, Jake Morrison prepared to retire. He had spent 10 years commanding the station, 10 years watching humanity's expansion into the galaxy. He had seen first contact with dozens of species. He had navigated diplomatic crises, and he had sent brave people into danger more times than he wanted to remember. Admiral Phillips had come personally to oversee the change of command ceremony. She stood with Jake on the observation deck looking out at the stars. "You could stay," Phillips said. "The fleet could use someone with your experience." Jake shook his head. "I have done my part. Time to let younger people take over. Besides, I have grandchildren I barely know. I want to spend time with them while I still can." "What do you think humanity's role will be going forward? Are we going to be the galaxy's protectors forever?" "I hope not," Jake said. "I hope eventually the other species learn to defend themselves, to stand up to bullies without needing us. But until then, yes. We will do what needs to be done." Phillips nodded slowly. "We are building more ships, training more soldiers. The Council has already asked for our help 3 more times. There is a pirate fleet harassing trade routes near the Quilleen system. A territorial dispute between 2 minor species that is about to turn violent. Reports of another slaver organization operating near the Galactic Rim. And we will answer," Jake said, "because that is who we are now. Not conquerors, not explorers, protectors." On the Reaper, Captain Lisa Grant received new orders. Another distress call. Another species in trouble. This time it was the Threnny, a civilization of peaceful aquatic beings whose worlds were being raided by pirates. Chris Harper was already plotting the course. 3 days travel at maximum speed. "The Threnny are offering to pay us, but I told them we do not work for money." "Good," Lisa said. "We do this because it is right, not because it is profitable." Lieutenant Kate Rogers, promoted after her actions at New Vancouver, looked up from her station. "Captain, we have been in combat for 4 months straight. The crew is tired. The ship needs repairs. Maybe we should let another vessel take this one." Lisa understood the concern. Her crew had been through hell. They deserved rest, but she also understood something else. "Pull up the distress message," Kate did. The voice that came through was desperate, pleading. Children were being taken. Families were being killed. It was Sarah's 4 all over again. "We will rest when they are safe," Lisa said firmly. Helm set course for Threnny space. Maximum speed. The Reaper turned toward the stars and accelerated. Behind it, the other 7 warships from the Battle of New Vancouver fell into formation. They had fought together, bled together, and now they would answer another call together. On Series 4, the Velnar had built their memorial. The statue stood in the center of their capital city, a towering figure of a human marine in full armor, one hand holding a weapon, the other extended to help a Velnar child to their feet. The inscription was written in both Velnar script and English. They came not with halos but with fire. They were not what we hoped for but what we needed. Lyra, the Velnar delegate who had spoken at the council, stood before the memorial with her nieces, the children she had thought lost forever, now safe and growing up in a world that had been saved by humans who looked like monsters but acted like heroes. "Are the humans still protecting people?" one of the children asked. "Yes," Lyra said. "They are out there right now helping someone else who needs them." "Will they always protect us?" Lyra thought about that question. She thought about Ambassador Helen Price, about Captain Lisa Grant, about Sergeant Amy Coleman. She thought about the humans she had met, with their capacity for terrible violence and profound kindness. "I think they will protect us until we learn to protect ourselves," Lyra said, "and then they will teach us how to protect others." That is what they do. They do not just save people, they inspire them to be better. The child seemed satisfied with that answer. They placed flowers at the base of the memorial, as had become tradition among the Velnar. Flowers for the demons who had become their angels. In the Krell Empire, things were changing. Emperor Krell Noth had been overthrown by his own generals, who had seen the writing on the wall. The empire was dying. Species they had conquered for generations were breaking free, and the humans were helping them. The new Krell leadership reached out to the Galactic Council with an unprecedented offer. They would release all slaves. They would return conquered territories. They would submit to council oversight and reform their society. It was Ambassador Helen Price who negotiated the terms. She was firm but fair. The Krell would face justice for their crimes, but they would also be given a chance to change to become something better than they had been. "Why are you helping us?" the new Krell leader asked. "We would have killed you all if we had won." "I know," Helen said, "but we are not you. We believe people can change. We believe in second chances. Just look at Commander Vectar. He was a slaver and a killer. Now he is teaching other Krell about human ethics and laws. He is using his life in prison to try to make his people better. You have strange values for warriors." "We are not just warriors," Helen corrected. "We are human. That means we can be violent when we need to be, but it also means we can be compassionate. We can forgive. We can hope. Those things are not weaknesses. They are our greatest strengths." 6 months after the Battle of New Vancouver, the Galactic Council held a ceremony. Representatives from every member species attended. At the center of the Grand Hall, a new statue was unveiled. It depicted 8 human warships arranged in a defensive formation, standing between a planet and a vast enemy fleet. At the base were the names of every crew member who had fought in that battle. Above it, words in every galactic language. They asked not what they would gain, but what they could give. They risked not for glory, but for those who could not fight. Let all who see this remember that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the choice to protect.